Hi, okay, so in this video I'm going to show you how you could tackle this problem. This is the project assignment, the sandwich assignment that I assigned to the class for chapter 4. So this project is composed of 4 classes. Okay, as you can see here, we have the part A for class 1, which is the bread class, and it says it needs to have a data fields for the bread type and calories per slice, and also include a constructor that takes parameter for each field, and also your getters and setters. And then we'll also include an additional field called model, which is a public final static string of and then initialize it to the staff of life. So here we have the UML diagram. UML is a unified model language diagram that is used pretty much across almost every field. But it's very common in computer science and especially computer engineering, or software engineering, when you design objects and classes. And so in this example here we have the bread class. So this diagram is usually composed of 3 sections, like you see here, 3 little sections here, but it could be more or less depending on the complexity of your class. So usually the first box here is the name of the class. Okay, so in this case it's the bread class. The next box below, or next section, contains your data fields, or just your fields or your attributes. Okay, it does not contain any local variables. You won't see that in here. So we have the first one is the bread type of type string, and the plus and minus on the left here is just to tell you that that field or that method down here, as well as you can see, is either a public, private, or protected. Okay, so the minus means it's private, plus is public, and then if it's a protected field, then we have the pound sign. Okay, so we have 2 private fields called bread type and calorie per slice, or cal per slice, of type string and double respectively, and we have a model which is a constant. So by convention, constants variables are always capitalized, okay, all caps. So when you see it, you know right away that this is a string. This is a constant. And so also you see the naming I have in my code here are conformed to the convention in Java and most other languages. So when you write your code, you try to follow the convention, so that when other programmers see it, they know exactly what they are, what type of data they're supposed to store, and what that function or the method is supposed to do, or what type of data that field is supposed to hold. So that becomes very important. Of course, there's no rule for that, but as a professional programmer, or as you become better, you'll see that these become a really helpful methods of how you define your methods and your variable names. Okay, so I have bread type. So variable names always follow this camel casing feature. We have the lowercase for the first character, and if you have other words associated with that field name, then you will capitalize the first character of that each word. So for example, the bread type, so lowercase for B, and then capitalize the T here, and same thing with the cal per slice. Okay, the same rule applies to the methods. So you can see set bread type, set cal per slice, and so on. Okay, so I have 3 fields, and I have the setters and getters for the bread. Okay, and then we have the part B. It's very similar to the bread, except we call it sandwich filling. It includes 2 fields of filling type and cal per serving. And then we have the data as string and double respectively. We have the setters and getters for that. Nothing so much different there. Part C has a class called sandwich. Now this class has a composition. A composition is a class that is composed of other class objects and or fields, but so in this case, if you can see, we have 2 fields called bread type and sandwich filling, which are have the data type of bread and sandwich filling, right? So this class sandwich is composed of 2 other classes and its fields. So this is what's called a composition. And then we have the setters and getters for those as well. And you may wonder why you need them. Well, you will treat these just like your variable names, okay? Because you have the minus sign in front. This means that these 2 types, the bread and sandwich, are both private. So you cannot reach out to the bread or the sandwich filling class without going through some type of public methods like you see down here. If you want to access it directly from the bread or the sandwich filling objects, then you want to set these to public. Okay, so again, by convention, you always want to set these to private unless you really have a reason why you should set them to public, and then access these through the public methods down here. So to reach to the bread methods up here, all these fields and methods, you need to access it through the bread get bread type method here, and then from there you can get the bread information up here. Okay, we'll see that example in a minute. And then finally we have our application class, which is this test sandwich class, and this is the program class. It has a main method. As you can see, it has no data fields. Okay, we had nothing there. I just had three methods. One is the main, and then we have a display sandwich information, takes two parameters in my example. There are other ways to solve this problem, so my way is basically to make it a little simpler and just to pass the sandwich number literal number to this method here. So you can do other ways. It does not return anything, just basically prints information to the screen, and then you have a function or method to calculate the total calories and then returns a tight double. Okay, so the calories actually, it should probably makes more sense if you use int or integer type, because calories are usually measured in integers, whole numbers, and not decimal numbers. So probably it makes more sense to use int. But in any case, this will be sufficient. And then we have our sample run that will look something like this. So we create three bread objects. Okay. And then to put this all together, we have this complete UML diagram here. So again, the lines, as you can see, this is one of the tools that helps programmers to put their codes together so they know how to start here, right? It helps them to code. This is using the UML diagram method. You could also use pseudocode, okay, and there are other methods as well, such as the hierarchical chart, similar to the organizational chart. But as you can see, UML has rules and how you use them, and so as you can see, all these symbols have meanings, like the way it's structured here, the different sections, the plus and minuses, these lines here, whether they're solid or they are dashed, or if they have an arrow points, a solid arrow or not, and in this case the diamond shape and so on. So all these have rules in UML, whereas in pseudocode there's no rule, right? There's no such universal rules. So just quickly, I will explain what the plus and minus are, and the pound sign is for protected fields or methods. The line here you see is the orange lines here has a diamond shape. This means this is a composition. Okay, so the bread and the sandwich are composed inside the sandwich class. So this is a composition. And the sandwich the test sandwich here, it can instantiate either the sandwich or the bread or the sandwich filling classes directly. So it doesn't have any lines drawn to it, but you can just literally use them, assuming that in this example all of these classes are in the same package. Okay, so that's our diagram. So let's go into the code and put this into writing code. So I'm going to code Eclipse. I will create a new project, shortcut here, project, and I'm just going to call this project the what's it called again? I'm going to go back and just see what I want to make sure it's, maybe call it the test bakery something. Yeah, tip top bakery, we call that. So tip top bakery project. Okay, accept that, and then I'm going to create a class called bread, and this is again, convention of your name for the classes should be follow the Pascal case, and you always capitalize the first letter and every letter of the first word after that. And then this is a class that it does not contain the method, so I'm good with that. Okay, so we have the bread class. Let's create another one, the sandwich filling class. this is again just another class we use in the sandwich. And then we have the sandwich class. Okay, and finally we have the test sandwich. And this is probably the main class, so we're going to include the main method in there, and there we have it. Okay, so this is where we start a program, and the main method, we as you look in the diagram, we have a two other methods. We'll put that in here later. But let's go into the bread class. So in here I have two fields, well, actually three. They should all be private. So the first one is bread type. Okay, this is of type string. So we should put a string here. Bread type, and then we have the double cal per slice. Okay, and then we have the public excuse me, public static. Actually, this would be final, right? It's a final static model and assigned to the string, the staff. Remember, if correctly, staff of life. That's what we call it, but I mean, if you want to call something else, that's completely fine. I'm not going to mark you any wrong for that. So it should be type string. Alright, so those are the fields, and you're asked to create a constructor for this. So public bread. You could create this blank one, is fine. If you don't, it's okay too. I'm not gonna mark you for any of that, but sometimes it's good to do that. So I'll just leave it right there, and I'll leave it blank in there. So let's see, we have a we're gonna pass a string to this 2 here. This one we don't have to initialize. This is already initialized for us. So I'm gonna pass this type of string, bread type. If you see my examples, you'll see that I name my variable names exactly the same as the field names, and that is because it makes it easier to read and to associate these strings or these fields and local variables here. So will be cal per slice. Okay, and then we're going to create the public getters and setters here. So setters and getters goes in here, and again, I'm going to use the shortcut to do that for us. So really quickly, I could just do a here and then source generate setters and getters for just these 2 here. I don't need to do for the model. Okay, so here's my setters and getters created, and then inside the constructor I want to use the setter to set these field. Okay, and then also want to set the cal per slice. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for this class, right? And actually this one should go up here, so I know that they are setters and getters. So let's save this file and then move on to the sandwich filling. This will be very similar to the bread, because the only difference is that you don't have the model, which is just the extra field. So we're still gonna have private of type string, and this is the filling type, and private double cal per serving. Okay, I'm going to follow my UML here. If you remember, the UML has these 2 fields. Then we have the public constructor, sandwich filling. Again, I'm just going to create that empty one anyway. You don't have to do it, but it's fine to do it. And then we're going to pass a string type of filling type, and then I'm going to pass the double for the calorie per serving. Okay, so that's my constructor. And again, I'm going to create the setters and getter for these. So again, right click here where you want to start generating these setters and getters. Go to source and generate setters and getters. And in this case, for both of them, and they should be public. Okay, so got that in there, and then I'm going to use the set filling type for filling type. And set cal per serving. So as you can see, when I name my variable this way, it's very easy for me to quickly associate them to the correct methods and so on. Okay, so very fast. So I'm done with this one here. Save, and then we move on to the sandwich class. So this is the composition. It composed of two fields called the bread and the filling type, right? So we're going to have the bread type, set both to private. We call this just I would just call it bread. Okay, so bread, and then we have the private sandwich filling, the class name, which can be used in this case as a variable data type, sandwich filling. Okay, and then I'm done with that one. That's all I need. I have a constructor for the sandwich. I'll just again leave that in here, and then I have the public sandwich of stream. I'm going to pass the data to the bread and then the data to the sandwich filling from the main method. Okay, so I'm going to pass. So if you look at the bread, if you look in here, the bread has 3 parameters, but really just these 2 here, right? So it needs the string for the bread type and the calories for the calorie per slice, and the same for the sandwich filling. So it takes 2. So I need 4 variables here, 4 parameters to be received from the main method. So the first, I'm going to use that for the bread first. So it'll be the bread type, right? Bread type here, and then the double for the bread calories. Again, I want to name my variable names as meaningful as possible, so I'll know how to use it in the code. If you just use B type, C type, whatever it is, it's kind of hard to tell what B type is, or BT is, So name something more meaningful. In this case, mine would be like just maybe I call it filling type, and then I have a double for filling calories. Okay, I'm out of space here. I'm gonna close this over here. Okay, so there's my thing, and if it's too long, you can also break this into multiple lines. Like this is fine too. Okay, it's easier to read sometimes, but I'll leave it back as it was. So now I'm going to generate my setters and getters. Again, you need the setters and getters because to get to the bread or the sandwich filling class, you need to get through the public methods. If you don't do that, then these have to be set to public. Okay, so again, the same rules. Go to source, generate setters and getters for the bread and sandwich filling, and then we are done. As you notice, it puts everything in for me automatically. Okay, so I don't have to type it in. So pretty cool. And then in here, again, I will use instead of adding these into the fields. Before I do that, I want to instantiate the objects in here. So notice I declare 2 variables here, or 2 fields, and they're of the bread and sandwich filling object types, but they're not really instantiated here until I put the keyword new, right? So when I do a new sandwich, it's going to instantiate 2 objects in here. One is called bread, one's called sandwich filling. And so every object you create for each sandwich, you can have 2 separate objects in here that are associated or part of the sandwich class or sandwich object. So I'm going to say new bread, and I will pass to this bread method or constructor the bread type, and then the bread calories. Okay, that's that one. And then we have the sandwich filling object up there equals to the new sandwich filling class. I'm passing the filling type and then the filling calories. Okay, so I instantiate the objects. Now I can set them to my setters and getters. Okay, so I guess you don't have to do it, but you could. So there's nothing wrong with that. So you could say, you know, set bread, and then the bread, and then set sandwich. Okay. So this one here is pretty much complete. And then we save this file and then move on to the main program. Okay, so in the UML we don't have any methods in the field here, I mean in the public class. We have just local variables, and then we're going to instantiate three objects, three sandwich objects. So sandwich, sandwich1 is equal to new sandwich. I'm going to pass in the type of sandwiches. So if you notice, we have in the URL, I mean UML, we have three objects. In the project, we're supposed to create three objects of the sandwich type, and then we're going to pass those data to those the sandwich class. Okay, so the first one here is rye. We'll call it rye, and 50 calories. And then we have the egg salad as the filling, and then 150 calories for that serving. That's the first object. And then I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to create the other two objects. So sandwich 2 and 3. Okay, it's 2 will be wheat. Okay, and then the fourth one here is white. Then 150 here, let's just say here is 75, and the type of filling is going to be just cheese. Has 250, so a lot of calories there. This one here is just the green salad, and has 50 calories, which is much healthier, I suppose. Okay, so these are my objects, and then now I need to display the information. So I want to do like display sandwich info, and I'm going to pass in each sandwich along with a sandwich counter. Okay, so I'm going to do this 3 times for each of those, and each of those will have its own ID. So the logic here is pretty much complete here. That's all I need to do. And then inside the sandwich method, so we do down here public static void. When I'm returning any data, we're just going to print it out. So set to void sandwich info, and I'm going to pass the sandwich object here. So sandwich, I call it sandwich, you call it whatever you want, it's fine, but just make sure you match the type, the data type. And then we have the int for the I guess we'll call this is the counter or the sandwich number. Again, you kind of make sure you name it something more meaningful to your code, but in this case it doesn't matter what it is. Just call it counter, call it X or I, it doesn't really matter. But I'm just gonna call this like sandwich, maybe like number or something. Okay. So now we're going to basically display that information. But before we do that, we also need to calculate that total calories from within the display class. Okay, and then we're just going to display that to the console. So I'm going to create a method called get. So this will be a return type. Okay, of type double. Get total calories. Again, you want to follow your UML. Make sure you have the methods are named correctly to match your UML. Sandwich, All I'm passing just a sandwich object because I can access all those information through that object. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm going to return the information. You could create a local variable here and then store each item separately and then return them. So you could have like, double, bread cal, right? And then you get the sandwich dot get bread dot get bread calorie per slice. Okay. So that's for the bread. You need for filling calories. And again, the sandwich object get sandwich fillings dot get per serving. Okay, you could do that, and then you could just say now return bread calories times 2, and then you plus the filling calories. That's a return type. You could do that, or you can do all in one take. A return, sandwich dot get bread dot get calorie per slice times 2 plus sandwich dot get sandwich filling dot get calorie per slice serving. Okay, either one's fine, whichever is easier for you. So I could do this and just return 1. So I will comment these two out and just use that one there. Okay, and then we're done for this one. So I'm going to go back into my display information, and this is where I will display the data to the screen. So you could just start typing the system.out. You want to print an empty line. That's one way to do it. There are lots of ways to do it. I just make sure I have an empty line, a new line every time when I print the sandwich out. The system out dot print the model. Okay, so you can access this directly through the bread class. Okay, like this is fine because the model is a static. It's public and it's static, so you can access directly. That's fine. Okay, you can even just do this. Well, no, you need do the bread class. I mean, like do the sandwich dot okay, and then here you need to go through the bread because it belongs to the bread. Get bread and then dot model. Okay, so access it either way. So I'll do that here, and then finally dot out print the bread type. Not finally, but the next thing is we want to print this line. Okay, and then this is just for formatting purposes. Okay, well, we're going to put like bread number sandwich number. Okay, and then we have the bread type. Okay, I will use the tab here so that it's formatted correctly. They're all aligned perfectly. Instead of using a lot of space characters, I just use the tab, and you can easily align them with the tab. So sandwich dot this is the bread type. So get bread dot get bread type. Okay, and then system out dot print. This is the calories per slice. And then sandwich dot get bread calories per slice. System out dot print. This will be the filling type. Get sandwich now, and then get filling type. And then system out print the calories per serving. sandwich get sandwich filling get calorie per serving, and then finally we have the total calories. Oops. So total calories, and then I'm gonna call the method in here, get total calories, and I'll pass the sandwich object to it. Okay, so let's save it and we'll see if this works. Okay, so let's run this, and so here we have the output for each bread. Okay, so bread 1 gets instantiated here, calls the sandwich, pass 4 parameters to the sandwich. It goes in here, the sandwich accepts these 4 parameters, and then instantiate the bread object, pass the bread type and calories to the bread, pass the filling type and filling calories to the sandwich filling, and then add that to the fields up here. And then so inside the bread we receive those 2 variables, and then assigns to the bread type and so on from the sandwich class. Same thing here. Okay, so and then finally we do the display. So we display the sandwich pass a parameter 1, and that one here is this one right down here. Okay, we pass that to the second parameter, which is the sandwich number. So of course there are better ways to do this, and probably a more efficient way. You can also assign a variable inside the sandwich class in here, and you can make that as an ID or something, and you pass that into the sandwich class as a different parameter here on the this line here, or you can even create it in here in the constructor here, in the field here as counter or something, and then each time you create a sandwich you just increment that, and then you can add it to your code. Okay, so like you can do like that as well. Alright, so I hope this is helpful. The code is going to be posted on my Google Drive, and I will pass that as well to the Blackboard. You can access it and compare it with yours. Also read my comments about your assignments. I put some comments in there. You guys did some really good job, seeing some really creative ways of how you tackle this problem. So great job and great work. And if you have any questions, if you still don't get it, I highly encourage you to draw it out, put into either Pseudocode or the UML if you know UML, or put to a flowchart or whatever it takes to make this work. Okay, so you follow the steps, one step at a time to make sure you really get it. I know sometimes you have to learn these new jargons like fields and methods and whatnot, but as long as you know what they mean and you understand what they do, then you will pretty much solve every problem. Okay, thank you.